Thank you for having me speak today. Although it's a little daunting to think I'm going to be talking about oral proficiency evaluation to the DLI, I think I have some things that you can think about. All right, the objectives today are, first of all, to talk about language proficiency and to show you a tool that we use here for teaching about proficiency to our language students in Spanish and Portuguese, Spanish basically. And also I will connect the whole idea of proficiency to, wow, this is slow, okay, to linguistic pragmatics and its relationship to proficiency and language learning. And at the end, I'm going to present a proposal for evaluation that maybe you can consider it for the future. So first of all, what is proficiency? Well, if you take the formal definition of it, it is basically advancement in knowledge or skill, or in other words, progress. And there are 4 skills, as you all know, involved in second language learning, which are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And this tool deals mainly with the speaking skill, but also to some extent to the listening skill as well. The proficiency website that we've designed is called SPT, Spanish Proficiency Training. And it has basic initial goals that we started out to address. I teach the Spanish Applied Linguistics class for future teachers, future public school teachers, and it was difficult to tell them about different proficiency levels because most of them have not, they've forgotten how they used to sound when they were first starting out, or they're heritage language learners and they don't have that feeling of going through different levels. So we put together a corpus of these videos of different proficiency levels, of learners of different proficiency levels, and we also included some heritage language learners so that they can also see what their students, and since we have so many heritage language learners in Texas, what they can do at different levels. So an overview of this project, it started out as a joint project with Curl, the Liberal Arts Technology Services, and myself, plus some graduate students that were interested in applied linguistics. And we came up with a web-based corpus of 239 videos, 1 to 4 minutes each, which actually are produced by 38 second language learners of Spanish and 16, including 16 heritage Spanish language learners. And it's done in an interview format focused on the learners. That is, you look at the learners as they talk and not at me, but you can hear me in the background. And after the viewers look at the videos, then they have different questions that they go through with feedback to learn about different proficiency features. The same interview questions are asked to guide the interview to all of the learners. And the questions address things like grammar and vocabulary and interactional phenomena. And the collaborators were these graduate students. Some of them have gone on to finish their PhDs and be professors as well. It turned out that this tool, this website, became used for 3 different things. First of all, it's its primary objective to train future Spanish teachers to learn to assess proficiency in a general way. And secondly, to be used as a corpus for research for future teachers, for future researchers, my graduate students, in evaluating proficiency, and also to look at research phenomena like, let's say, they're looking at a grammar feature, they can easily see how it's carried out across proficiency levels. And also to have a some material that learners themselves could look at, and they could watch these videos and see what errors and things are made, and they can think about what they themselves do and try to compare their responses. Although I should say that this third purpose has not been so popular, because a lot of times when they watch the video, then they become self-conscious and say, oh, I don't want to make that mistake. And, so it's been used less for those, but it has been used for the first two. To give you an idea of the difference between the ACTFL levels and ours, we have the beginner, intermediate, advanced, and advanced. We didn't go beyond that. We don't have superior, we don't have distinguished. The reason for this collapsing of categories is because mainly it was just to introduce the concept of proficiency, and also most of our Spanish learners in these classes to be future teachers are not even quite at the advanced low level. They're usually around the second level, the intermediate and intermediate advanced. So we decided to just make this simpler and to show them these different categories. Okay, so let me show you the site. If I can get in here. Whoops. Okay. All right, there we go. All right, so this is the Spanish Proficiency Training Corpus. It has these, oh gosh, it's got big again. We have a practice portal where they can go and just watch, well, first of all, they see these different descriptions of what proficiency is at different levels. And then they can go to a sample activities site where they see a definition of proficiency, and then they are asked to watch a video of a learner. This is what it looks like. So she's talking about her family. She was asked how her family is. And so after the students watch this video, then they are to go to these questions, which ask them things about which is the most important about important in being able to communicate in a foreign language. What are some indications of learners who do not know much Spanish and they pick the right answers? Let's say I'll pick that one. That's a wrong answer. So I keep picking the wrong answer. Ah, I got it right. Okay, so the check marks is the way that they get feedback that they got it right. And then after they watch this, not this one video, but they're supposed to watch several videos, and then they're supposed to guess the learner's proficiency level. So that's the way that works. You have the practice, and then we actually have the video activity here, where you see the learners listed here. And let's say I'll pick Natalie, and I want to pick a topic where she's talking about her past. Let's see. And then if the viewers want to see this whole thing after they finish watching, they have a transcript of what was said. Okay, so after they watch that video, then again, they go down here, if I can go down here, to these questions about grammar accuracy. Then they pick one of the answers for each of these questions, they hit score, and they get feedback and also their answers on this. There are questions about vocabulary, fluency, conversation management. I should say that most of us, all of the students who worked with me on this project, like myself, work in Pragmatics, so that was conversation management was something that everybody wanted to look at. And then finally, they see some generalization questions. For example, what are the general characteristics of this learner that placed him or her at this level that you think it is? And you have some examples. And as you can see here, these questions are open-ended, so they type in their answer, and then when they hit score, they see a longer answer that may or may not address what they've said. And then at the end, after again they've watched several videos done by this certain learner, then they can try to guess what her level is. Let's say, I think she's maybe this. No, that's not right. Maybe she's this. Yeah, that's what she is. Okay, so that is basically what the video website is, and it has been used in different ways. It's been used in different ways. For example, this there. Okay, it has been used as a video research corpus, and for example, the advantages are that the same questions are heard every single time. There are only 2 interviewers in total. I'm the one who did all of the non-heritage language learners. Then I have another graduate student who did all of the heritage learners. And also, again, one of the advantages is that the transcriptions are provided. Some research that has been done on this have varied. Things like null first person singular pronoun use by these learners, lexical richness in interactions, and correlating formulaicity and fluency, a corpus-driven approach. So that's basically the website. This second website was constructed based on this website. Let me see if I can get in here. Yeah, it's based on this website, and it connects the Spanish Applied Linguistics class to this website so that they read about concepts, let's say like transfer, overgeneralization, or whatever, and then they can go to this site and work on different things with the videos. So for example, let's say they're working on communicative competence, and they watch the video using this person's speech and this another one here, and then they download, excuse me, I have to stop. Okay, and then they can download I guess I have both videos going on at a time. There. They can download these PDFs that ask them questions about communicative competence based on the transcripts. For example, they're asked here to talk about what grammatical features they saw in the, what grammatical features they saw in the site or the videotape, and where am I? Well, anyways, what grammatical features they saw, what sociolinguistic features they saw, etc. Okay, so going back to my, I have too many sites open. And then they get their answers back on this as well. Okay, so going back to this, and this, by having the website, it allows the concepts in the textbook to become real, because they can see students actually, or learners actually making these mistakes or doing these phenomena. I have an example here, like one of the things in the textbook is talking about frozen expressions that learners use. And so I have this no es lo que me gusta, yo creo que, and that's something that one of the learners says in the data. Okay, now if other developments that have come out of the website have been this one, for example, we have empirical effectiveness research, and we have these 3 other projects. I'll talk about the Proficiency Badges. This one is headed by Abigail Dings and Dr. Malia Lamont, both of UT. Well, she is now here. Their intention was to create these badges or symbols of completing given tasks related to proficiency based on this website. And this is intended for teacher candidates in service or perhaps pre-service, and for a continuing accreditation. And for example, the badges represent different levels. There are different levels of badges, that is, with different tasks to complete. So an example would be, for example, if you have finished answering, after you've finished answering all of these training questions, looking at all of these elements in the website, give some thoughtful answers to the following questions. What did you learn about proficiency that surprised you? What areas of proficiency do you seem to focus on the most? And what areas do you focus on the least? And you're supposed to then post this and get feedback from the teacher who reads those, or the leader. And there, again, this is only for the beginner or the novice, and then there are other badges for other levels. The other project that came out of this is headed by Judy Laskin-Gasparro of University of Iowa. And her intention was to produce a SPT website giving the concepts of proficiency and its levels, and also give a lot more activities that lead you into the website and into the concept of proficiency. So for example, this is one that she made up for the same video that you saw of the girl with the red shirt who was not very fluent. She says here, now watch the video clip in which Natalie talks about her hometown. You'll watch it twice while you complete the table below. In the first viewing, focus on the interviewer's questions, which are printed, and then complete the second column. And in the second viewing, focus on the students' responses and write your notes down. So for example, you could see you would write down what the interviewer question was and what kind of question it was. An example was, what is Beaumont like? Describe Beaumont. Beaumont is a city in Texas. What is Beaumont like? And describe it to me. And you would identify if this is a yes/no question, a directed information, embedded choice, open-ended, or a polite request. And so it would make the viewers more conscious of the different types of questions that are that elicit different types of information, and in different formats as well. Okay, so I'm going to go on to how does this relate to pragmatics. I noticed we have a pragmatics talk after this, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but it's basically a simple definition would be the study of language in context, and excuse me, language use in context, and it's to it's aimed at understanding how people communicate and interpret intentions. So for example, you can have somebody say, it's hot in here, and that's fine. You have this man expressing that it's hot. In Texas, it's hot. Then you have this other picture where the connotation might be different. Let's say she's 55 years old and she says it's hot in here. That may have a different connotation than for this man here. So the pragmatics has to do with what the context conveys to you as far as meaning is concerned. One way, and there are lots of ways to express the same thing, right? We all know that just pragmatic variation, language variation in general is vast. So one thing I usually show to my students when I'm talking about pragmatics is I give them the situation about Anna's car. You need to borrow her car for tonight, but because you've wrecked yours, but you have an important dinner to attend, and the last time you borrowed it, you put a small dent in it. So what do you say to her to get your car? And I asked this question of one of my students, and he came up with, hopefully this works. Okay. Oh, wait. Yeah, okay. I have to go down here. Got it. I should pay this guy $100 for giving me this videotape because he was so great. In any case, you could see that one thing that you notice is the way he changed over the course of time because he was having trouble. So that is this whole idea of pragmatic competence or pragmatic expression by language learners is an issue that I think is important. Wait, how do I get out of here? Okay. So just as there are levels of proficiency, there are levels of pragmatic competence as well. And we've looked at studies that have shown that beginners usually use very direct, simple pragmatic forms for their requests, for example, and more proficient users use more indirect forms that require a lot more processing. And also they're much more complex syntactically and well, in all senses of the word. So they use things like suggestions instead of direct commands or direct, well, as he said. Another issue dealing with pragmatics is that of implicatures. For example, a girl says to her boyfriend, you know, they're having a big sale on diamond rings at Zales this weekend. And so these meanings are expressed indirectly, they're implied. Although it may seem to us pretty direct here, but for somebody else actually coming from another culture or another culture or language, this may totally escape them. And this idea of presupposition, that is information you presume the other person to know already as their background information, is something that also plays into pragmatics. And if someone says, we're not in Kansas anymore, and I say this in the middle of the Brazilian jungle, I don't think that they would understand what I'm talking about. So this also plays into pragmatics. Also the face factor, the face being your self-image, and that you want to protect that self-image. So for example, if a graduate student comes to see me, she can say, oh, I know you're terribly busy, but could you sign my form for me? And this first bolded utterance would be a way for her to save face. Instead of me saying, I'm really too busy, she says it first, so she's able to save her face. So those issues, again, come into play, and you would be surprised at how the beginner learners actually they just totally gloss over them. So face-threatening act, I usually tell do I have enough time on this? Okay. Which of these following would you say are most threatening for your face? Can I have a glass of water? Could you take your feet off my table? Or make yourself at home? And of course the answer would be B, because it's most likely to offend someone or make them feel embarrassed or uncomfortable. Even though I said it, could you please take your feet off my table? I said it in a nice way. It still would be probably face-threatening. A, the first request for a glass of water wasn't a great imposition. It was requested and not demanded. And C, didn't pose any threat to the listener. It was an offer of hospitality. So these things you would think are pretty clear and straightforward, but when you're dealing with a second language, especially in personal conversation, face-to-face interactions, these issues do come up. And finally, I wanted to show you this one about differences in intercultural communication, where you ask your friend for a glass of water, and John in Spanish says, "Puedo tener un vaso de agua?" Can I have a glass of water? Which would be a direct translation, but it would be inappropriate to ask for a glass of water that way. You would say, "Dame un vaso de agua, por favor," or something like that, instead of, "Can I go and get myself a glass of water?" which is basically what this is saying. Okay, so another issue is the issues of framing, how you frame something. What was that? So, for example, in Japanese, when you say how smart your daughter is, she won the prize for her essay, the response is usually, "No, she was just lucky that day," which I hear in my own department with my Japanese colleague. And instead, in this country, you would probably say, "Oh, how smart your daughter is, she won the prize," and you say, "Oh, thanks, we're real proud of her." So the issues of framing also come up. And this is how you would probably describe them in Japanese society. The pride in one's achievements are not openly acknowledged, and it seems individualistic. Whereas your achievement should be deflected to another source, which is an indirect way of acknowledging it. So what my point is with this is I think we need to have some rubrics beyond just one context. And the context that we have now with the actual proficiency guidelines and the ones that I'm proposing with this website is that we have an institutional context with a talk framed by the goals of the institution, which are basically the oral proficiency exam. And in that context, the talk is usually centered on one party asking the questions and the other party giving information. The interviewer, initiates the interview and has control over all of these things: topic nomination, turn length, turn taking, and the other person understands what the expectations are and just provides that information. So actually, the pragmatic part of that hardly enters into it because the expectations are so strong and set up. In personal conversation, however, you have the context where, and this is usually studied through conversation analysis, you look at things like turn structure, length, how it's overlapped, how turns are overlapped, participants' orientations, that is, who takes the dominant role in the conversation and drives it, the issues of politeness and things like that. This example I wanted to show you, I'll read it in just the English part. The native speaker says, in the first years after the arrival of the Spaniards to the Americas, I think that close to 70% of the population in the Americas died, but not by murder or by, and then the learner agrees, And the native speaker continues, "No, nor for anything like that, simply because they weren't accustomed to the body." And then the learner jumps in with, "To the diseases." So this assessment that she makes of what he was about to say and her completion of his utterance actually shows something that's pretty advanced as far as personal conversations, personal interactions go. And that brings up issues then of politeness, the things I've been talking about, conversational expectations, what's expected by the speaker to follow the utterance, does the response fit the expectations, why or why not, what is the learner's level of participation in the talk. And learning to converse well involves not only speaking well, but also responding appropriately. So these issues would come up in a non-institutional talk to a great extent. Another thing I've found in my research is that we take for granted that things like salutations are fairly standard. Like in Spanish, you say, hola, disculpa, perdón, ¿qué tal, cómo estás, to start off a conversation. But when we actually ask the undergraduates in 2 different countries how they started off conversations, Spain only answered with these 51% of the time, in Mexico even less. So either the society is changing and they're coming up with different ways to start off conversations, or we have some definite cultural differences that we can't ignore. I think I don't have time to show you the next interview. 10 minutes? Well, I probably should give them time for questions. Okay. So thank you very much. I hope this provokes some comments. Do you have any questions?
For your videos that you have on your website, did you have to go through an institutional review board to get those put on there?
No, we have it was called institutional
review board, IRB.
Yeah, it was, yes. We have, what is it called? It's the IRB, a technological type of permission, yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
So who did the spade work of transcribing and then translating the transcriptions?
Translating the transcriptions? No, we didn't translate the transcriptions. We just have them in Spanish. That is what...
The translations here were just for the purposes of this presentation?
Oh, you mean of the guy who was talking? That was, I just did it for that one, yes. Any other questions? Yeah.
You said that this is a great tool for outreach with the university and training the teachers here, the pre-service teachers. Can you talk a little bit more about teachers that are already teaching and might be using this for professional updating?
Oh, well, the 2 offshoot projects that I mentioned were for updating, for example, the badges thing. We haven't coordinated it yet with the Texas or Educational Agency yet, but hopefully we can have them look at this and say, yes, this would be a project that could help the teachers in service receive their points or whatever they need to keep up to date. Yes?
You mentioned specialty levels of those and training the teachers. And I know a lot of states are moving towards requiring, I think, actual advanced low for a lot of their teachers. Is that something Texas is?
We have our own accreditation test, and it's it's called the Texas TEKS for load, right? Texas Education, I can't remember, Texas Knowledge and Skills for Languages Other than English, yeah, TEKS for load. And they take a test that includes speaking and overall knowledge of culture and language, which is a written part. Yes?
My question was, this is kind of this research/assessment tool, but what about the pedagogical applications? Because I don't know about Spanish, but I know that in Russian, at any rate, a lot of the pragmatic building blocks of the language, it's very spotty and not systematic. I'm just wondering, is there any work with your team or integrating this sort of thing into a
this, I think that's the way we're going, but this is not that, it hasn't been out there very long. So that would be the next steps, as to make this into a standalone project with a standalone book, actually, that would guide people towards that. Yes?
I have a question regarding the Spanishes. Like, are you using just the Mexican Spanish conversation or cultural or pragmatics, or do you accommodate other Spanishes?
That would be ideal. I mean, the project had to start small and locally, so we wanted to get more of a Mexican focus because we're so close to Mexico. And the next steps would be to add other types of Spanish and other types of heritage. We have, as I said, 16 heritage language learners on this site, and the goal also would be to add to that corpus as well, because there's a big difference in proficiency among the heritage language learners. This, as you can see, the project could go in a lot of different ways.
Speakers are all Mexican.
No.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you accommodate? One is from Ecuador, another is from Argentina, and the third is from Bolivia.
You mean how will I show native speakers eventually?
Yeah, so how do you use it in Pragmatics, for example? Or
Oh no, I'm sorry. My point was, and I guess I never said it, was that I think oral proficiency testing and evaluation rather needs to include other kinds of discourse besides just the institutional. It needs also to have more of a portfolio type of approach where you have an institutional sample and you have a personal conversation sample and other contexts. When I was at DLI doing a review not too long ago, one of our suggestions was maybe you need to also have materials that include more of the non-institutional discourse alone. Because what we saw was mainly, what you would hear from a radio or a control tower, that kind of institutional discourse. We said, well, what did the people never talk to other natives of the country? And they said, yeah, we don't, but we really don't have that kind of materials. So that was a suggestion to start building in that area. Okay. Yes.
I know you explained this, but maybe you could go into it a little more regarding why you created different names for the levels instead of just using the actual levels. Because it just seems to me it's confusing to have a different set of names for the categories instead of using
Right.
the standard one.
Well, the course that I teach, the Applied Linguistics course, is it's very broad, and it teaches them about the language and about teaching different, let's say, grammar points to the students in the future, and also it incorporates the proficiency. I think if you want to really speak about proficiency and teach about all the levels, you really need a course in it by itself because it's pretty complex and very, very detailed. And these students are just as I said, some of them don't even speak Spanish very well. So it's just mainly to get the idea of different levels of proficiency, get them introduced to that.
So it's mainly to make it less of a jargon.
Exactly.
So you're trying to give a plain English description of the
Yes.
levels instead of using the sort of slightly jargonistic version
Right.
of novice and whatever.
Right.
The actual scales. That was the.
Absolutely,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
And if I could just add on, and to avoid confusing people in another way, which is that they're thinking this is we're not training people to do OPIs.
Okay.
And so in a way, she's trying to just get the notion of proficiency in general, and decouple it from ACTFL.
Okay.
You know.
Yes?
The federal government is very interested in graduates with an undergraduate degree in Spanish or Arabic or Hindi or whatever it may be. And I'm wondering to what extent removing by 3 steps from the ILR proficiency descriptions may be a disservice to those who might be contemplating employment in government positions that require a certain level of proficiency.
Right. As I said, I think that if you're going to go in that direction, you would take then a course or some kind of introduction to that, to the general ACTFL guidelines in itself. The students, when you look at our syllabus in applied linguistics, it's vast, and you go through grammar and you go through a lot of different concepts, and very little time actually can be spent on teaching them about proficiency. This is basically an intro to get the notion of proficiency. When you talk about this in the class, the students go, "Oh, I think I used to talk like that. You know, I can't remember ever talking like that, but I must have." So they've forgotten how it was to sound like a beginner because they've been away from it for so long. So it's just basically getting them back to the whole concept of being at different levels and what you could produce at different levels.
I think the value here is, when we talk ILR proficiency levels, we're looking at descriptions and it's theoretical, but when you have 240 video cuts that are examples of the proficiencies you're discussing, then it's so much more real.
I hope so. I mean, it's so far.
It's also a training tool for students.
Right, and I think for the beginning, for these students who are going to be basically public school teachers at the, well, I'd probably say high school level now, maybe the middle school level, but middle school and high school, they really don't. We don't have time to teach them all of the proficiency levels. Yeah. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.